Pretty much since the beginning of time, humans have been enjoying and creating reverb, whether this is singing or chanting in a naturally reverberant environment like a cave or a tunnel where it sounds really nice, or creating grand structures like cathedrals and amphitheaters to create lush reverbs or try to control them acoustically. So it should come as no surprise, actually, that when recording technology improved to the point where we have these amazing microphones and studios and we can create an incredibly dry and pure recording, you listen back to them and they don't actually sound very pleasing. Like if I take all of the reverb out of my voice here, things actually start sounding a little bit unnerving and unnatural. For many decades, engineers have been finding ways to blend back in a bit of this ambience. There's all different types of reverbs: chambers, springs, plates, convolutions. We're going to look at as many of them as we can, with the aim being to try and see which are maybe more suited to different tasks in a mix. There's absolutely no rules here. In fact, most of these reverbs were created by breaking the rules and trying to do something experimental and different. The first thing we're going to start with is the chamber reverb. It's sort of the first artificial reverb, it could be argued. This is created simply by taking your recorded sounds from your mixer, sending them out into a chamber, some sort of echoey or reverberant space, playing them out of a loudspeaker, and then recording the echoes and reverberation using a microphone. And then you can blend between this reverberant echo chamber and your original recording. Every room is going to have, a lot of build up of bass and low mids, so you're going to want to filter these, maybe put them on a different channel, but we'll take a listen to this just to sort of get things started. You can hear these are very bold, but they can also sound really moody and very roomy. There's a limited scope. Not every studio is going to have space, time, or money to set any of this stuff up. So this is where engineers started getting really smart, coming up with more artificial reverbs. And the first two that I want to start with are the spring and the plate, because they're so versatile and they have such a unique sound and character to them. So the spring reverb is basically there's loads of ways to build this, but it's a spring inside a tank. You have a input and output transducer either on either ends or at different points in the spring. You basically send your sound through the spring, it vibrates, and then you capture the result. It's sort of a bit crazy because you think, like, how would that sound like reverb? But if you take a listen on this click sample, any sort of transient that hits it gets this cascading and sort of spiraling ping. The reason I wanted to share this first is this is the one that when people hear it, especially a lot of people that are new to production, they go, that's the one I've been looking for. So if I play this on kind of funky, groovy guitar part, to start off with, we've obviously got something that's quite dry. Something quite fun about these reverbs is that you can really drive them, and when you start sort of overdriving that spring, you get all sorts of really interesting harmonics and saturation, but it's clearly not the most natural or authentic reverb. It's not going to sound like a lush, beautiful hall or a cathedral or anything like that. So another approach is the plate reverb. Much bigger than the spring reverb, but still smaller than a chamber. The first one that was invented or commercially available was the EMT 140, which is this huge, enormous, heavy metal plate inside a housing. So your sound, instead of being played out of a speaker, it's basically just vibrating the plate, and then you pick up the sound on other ends of the plate. So you can create a stereo reverb if you want to, by experimenting with different plate thicknesses, stacking different layers of plates, moving the input and output transducers around. You can radically change the size, the length, the shape and sound and just tone of that reverb. You're going to hear this one all over vocal recordings, on snares. In fact, it's really versatile, actually. So let's just take a listen. First, I'm going to try it on a synthesizer, and you'll hear how metallic the plate sounds and how it can add, oddly, a slightly modern edge to this synthesizer. You can hear that metallic shimmer that the synthesizer now has, but probably the best place to use a plate is on vocals. So I'll start with this vocal group, reverb turned off, then I'll blend it in, and then I'll solo the reverb so you can really hear it.
I'm a psycho, got me screwed up like a light bulb. I'm a psycho, got me screwed up like a light bulb. What did you do to me, oh. I'm a psycho.
So hopefully you can hear why these became almost an instant hit on vocals. They give you that immediate width and depth that we're looking for, but they don't have all of this build-up of like low-mid roominess and all these frequency peaks and dips that you're going to get in absolutely any room. They kind of just sound clean, and they're really easy to work with, which is why even though we have a million different reverb options today, the plate is one that you're going to see on, almost every modern production. Somewhere there's usually a plate reverb. This takes us smoothly onto digital and algorithmic reverbs, and I'm going to group these together even though some of them are hardware, some are software. These are the sorts of plugins you likely have in your DAW. They're either something like a lexicon that's maybe trying to recreate some of those classic sounds like plates, rooms, halls, or they're trying to push to do something completely new. These work by stacking and cascading, I was going to say hundreds, but who knows, maybe thousands of different decay tails from the original sound to create really smooth and lush reverbs. But honestly, most of them bridge the gap between reverbs, delays, and sort of echo generators. So if I give you a few examples here, we can get, the tightest slapback echoes and also just the most crazy cascading delay throws. Let's take a listen. Clearly you can do just about anything with these reverbs. I would highly recommend, if you're doing very experimental stuff, load this reverb up on a send or another channel and send your original signal to that. This way you have the most control. You can run reverbs into delays, into saturation, into EQ, and completely blend how that reverb interacts with the rest of your mix. It can give you a bit more control than just loading it up on the track that you're working on. Now, you've probably also noticed that some of these digital recreations don't really do the most faithful reproduction of these acoustic spaces, but sometimes that's actually where the magic is. Something doesn't really have to sound completely pure and authentic for it to sound cool, which is why, you're going to get all sorts of creative effects with reverb. You've got to ask yourself when you're adding reverb, do I want this to just enhance the ambience, or am I going for some really sort of crazy sound design here? All throughout this video, some of the examples have been convolution reverbs, which is actually by far my favorite type of reverb. How this works is recording a known impulse, like a quick sample, like a click or a single cycle waveform, playing that out in an acoustic space or running it through a reverb hardware unit, or any device to be honest, and then recording the output. This means you know how a known sample is going to react in that space. So using a little bit of maths, it's not that complicated because the plugins do it all for you, to be honest. You can just load up any of these different spaces and then run your sound through it. So whether you want a beautifully sampled cathedral, or whether you want one of these kind of rare or maybe expensive reverb units, you can pretty much access most of it using one of these plugins. So if you have something really beautiful like a cello where you want a very authentic reverb, you could easily load up a nice hall or a nice cathedral. In this case, I'll probably just go for a hall on this cello and just hear how pure and perfect it sounds. So you'll notice that while the dry cello, recorded in a nice clean studio, that sounded good, once we blended in some of that hall, it just sounded like it was really at home. Because when we're listening, if you want to listen to, say, an orchestra, you don't want to hear it in your living room, like a super weird, dry environment. You want to hear that in a nice hall. The reason I love convolution reverb so much is that people have recorded literally tens of thousands of these impulse responses in all sorts of beautiful acoustic spaces and running through pretty expensive and rare hardware, and you can pretty much just load them up for free. You've still got to adjust it just like any other reverb, but they are probably the most varied and most flexible, and that's what I'm looking for. However, there is something to be said for, if we have all of these options and all of these incredible digital reverbs today, why do, spring and plate reverbs still have a place? And it's because a lot of the time humans don't actually do very well with infinite choice. If you give us all the options for a mix, it can sort of paralyze some people with choice. And an example I like to use is with generative AI art. If you can do literally anything with this, we typically end up with a lot of garbage and almost nothing that is remotely emotional, creative, or meaningful. Whereas if you just give a human a piece of paper and a pencil, now the result you get with a pencil and paper, it might not be as impressive, but at least it's not going to be emotionally vacuous. It's going to have some kind of creativity and emotion embedded within it. And it's the same if you're mixing. Sometimes you don't need a million different options. You can just grab something that you know works, dial it in, and then move on with your life, move on with the rest of the song. What matters far more than the effect you choose is the performance that's running into that effect. If you've played the keys with some passion or you've sung with emotion, that is going to be what the listener hooks onto far more than, oh, they've loaded an AMT 140 when actually it would have been better if they used the Lexicon 224 plate on that one. Like, no one's ever going to think that. So I hope this was a really fun look into some of these effects. And if you want me to go much deeper on any of these effects, just let me know in the comments and I can make more, completely unsponsored videos like this. Now, I haven't asked for this on YouTube before, but if you did enjoy this, it's a completely non-sponsored video. Please do leave a like, and if you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider it if you want to see more videos like this. This is all pretty much what I do on this channel. It's all about audio and pro audio. So I don't usually ask for that on YouTube, but I know the algorithm likes it. So anyway, we finally got to that point now. So anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.